Dave with Taboo Customs. This video today, we are going to be installing one of our kits that will repair the rearmost body mounts on your Jeep TJ if perhaps you have broken those bolts off. So let's take a look at what we're talking about. All right, so with this kit, and each kit will do one side. So if you're needing to do both sides, you'll need two kits. You're gonna get the plate that you will weld in, and you will get this weld nut. The weld nut has a section on here that basically will just fit in the hole. You need to find a small 7/16 bolt. We'll use the bolt then to hold the nut in place while we weld it. Nut obviously will go on the inside of the plate. So with the nut now in place, we will go ahead and weld the nut all around. All right, now once it cools, you want to take the nut out, and then you want to clean any spatter off of this surface because it's going to go up against that box that's there for the mount. So of course, when we're talking about the rearmost body mount, we're talking about this one here back at the tailgate. Now, what often happens is that if you try to remove this bolt for this body mount, they will frequently break off. Now, we were working on all the other body mounts for this Jeep. Unfortunately, to lift the tub up on this side, we needed to remove this body mount, and lo and behold, on both sides, they broke. I take that back, sorry. This side it broke. That side, the nut up here will also spin. So that's the second failure that you can have. Of course, you can also, if your Jeep is very rusty, have this box rust out. That's not also too uncommon. However, in this Jeep, this box here is very solid, so we'll be able to fix this just by adding this kit. Now, if you do have a box here that's rusted out, this kit probably is not necessarily for you, or you might be able to use it, but you're going to have to, figure out some other pieces to rebuild this box. And we've done that before as well, but we don't have a kit for it necessarily. So the first thing we need to do is we would recommend that you remove the fuel tank. Now, obviously that's optional, but that is going to be up to you. If you want to live dangerously and leave the fuel tank in there, you can. Now for this side, being we are on the passenger side, we're actually going to go ahead and leave it in there, use some weld blankets. The driver's side is a little bit, maybe higher risk. You do have all the connections over there with the hoses and the fuel fill and everything. So again, you're going to have to decide whether you want to do that or not, and it's at your own risk if you do or don't, I guess. So anyway, the next step, the first thing we've got to do, obviously the bolt's already gone. This side we did disconnect the tail light up here, put the harness up above, pulled the rest of the harness out of the way because it does have a trailer harness on it. And now we're going to have to open up a hole in this area here. That hole is going to be roughly 2 inches by 2 inches square. Okay, so to cut the hole, you've got a few options. The easiest for us is going to be a plasma cutter here. So what we're going to do is this small hole is basically centered on your body mount here. If you look at the side, there's another plate, and it'll kind of tell you where the bottom is, because you don't want to cut down here. You want to cut basically just above that bottom, because you want to leave that bottom structure in these welds here if you can. So we're going to cut just above that. That's kind of the center line. You can cut it a little wider than taller, is my recommendation, at least to start out. Now, I do recommend that you have a fire extinguisher on hand. There's a chance that that could be full of mouse nest or anything else. There are some holes in the bottom of it, so mice can't get up in there. So in case you do start a fire, you might want to have a fire extinguisher on hand. Pretty much for any of these videos. If you've seen our other videos, you may have seen some where we had some fires. Okay, so for a couple of the possible scenarios of how well that nut will come out, you saw in the video, ours came out really easily, and that is because this was the nut that actually came out of it. That used to be a bolt. You can see now it is just rust. So that's the reason why you can see down here it broke off, because obviously that wasn't going to thread itself back through there. So with this, and since it was so rusted in that, and honestly the box isn't too bad, it's just the parts in there that rusted. Since it was rusted so bad, the castle, or the box that went around this nut that held it captive, it was just gone. So we didn't have to worry about trying to remove the box that went around the nut, because you do need to try to remove as much of that as possible to give you a flat surface for our new plate to go in there. In other scenarios like this one here, the nut just, well, we thought the nut spun, but it actually, and I don't know if this is from the factory like this, or someone put a different bolt in it. It does look like a factory bolt, where it's a little bit bigger down here at the bottom than it is up here in the shank, or someone used the wrong bolt in the wrong place. This nut was only threaded on the last couple of threads, so they threaded it through all of these, so about 1 inch of threads just in the last couple of threads. So when we tried to take it out, basically just stripped those last 2 threads off, or 1.5 threads, and it just spun on what used to be the nut. So with this one, the box was still there. We had to take this and basically drove this up through there and busted the box. Now with the hole cut in the front of that box, or in the front of the body mount in the rear, we could get in there with a large pry bar, pry this up, and then use a hammer and a chisel and chisel enough of this box that was holding this nut out so that we can get our new plate in there with the new nut on it. Okay, so now with our assembly, we've got our new body mount bolt. We don't have the bottom portion of the body mount. I've just got a washer on there for now, and we can go ahead and put it up in the hole we created, and we can start to thread that body mount bolt in. Now the reason for the washer instead of the actual body mount is we can now use this to locate the plate up here on the body mount. Now one thing that you might have done is if you left this edge here a little bit high, you can see how we have holes in these corners here. If you left that a little bit high, you can now go in there and fine tune that, and we're going to do that with basically a straight die grinder with a burr bit on there. Go in and we're going to take out some extra material in this section to bring it down. That'll help close up those holes, because we do want to weld these holes closed. That's why it's kind of important not to cut this a little bit too wide. Should have said that earlier. You probably want to keep it pretty close to this width here so you can weld those up. What we're also going to do is we're going to go ahead, outline the perimeter of this so that we can clean it up, and we're basically just going to clean it up with that straight die grinder and a 90-degree die grinder, and then we will realign it and we can go ahead and weld it. All right, so we have taken and we have primered the inside of the plate, the bottom side of the inside as well. We use a 3M weld through primer. If you use a paint or something else, there's a good chance that it's just going to melt, going to catch fire. You have to be careful of that. So we're going to put it back in place, use our body mount bolts and tighten it up again. Check and make sure that it is aligned. Now, depending on your Jeep, if you want, let's say it's a little bit open, you probably want it to be actually forcing it to close. You can actually pull that out, take a hammer, adjust it a little bit. It'll be a lot easier to weld if you do need to do that. And actually, I am going to do that a little bit. Be right back. All right, so now with it located, we can go ahead and weld it. But before we weld it, I want to make sure that your battery is disconnected. We are going to be going through the body. Now, I've got my ground clamp basically on this flange on the other side because there's not a real good place to put it anywhere. So being we are going through the body a good distance with our ground, definitely want to make sure that your battery is disconnected. You don't want to fry your computer for some reason. Not that I ever have, but I do know that it can occur. So now we'll essentially go and weld it. Now you've got a couple of options. You could weld it the sides and the bottom, leave the top and just RTV the top. And someone say, oh my God, it's not going to be strong. This plate is like 2 to 3 times as thick as what you're welding it to. So that brings this to point 2. You're going to need your welder turned down a fair amount, because if you're not careful, you can easily blow through this material here. You don't really want to do that, because then that'll just leave you another big hole that either you'll have to fill or leave, or you could RTV it, because I'm going to tell you, the sides and the bottom will be plenty strong. And on this one, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do the sides and the bottom, and we're just going to RTV this top, because it is quite difficult to get up here to this top. In the future, we might lower this kit a little bit, make it a little bit easier to get to, but for now, in this video, that's how it is. Alright, so that was the welding of that kit, and we did get to weld across the top. It is a bit of a pain. We probably will be changing that height a little bit, maybe even the width a little bit in the future. So if you are buying one of these kits, will probably be some changes. Make sure to read the instructions as far as the hole size. We'll try to be a little bit more prescriptive in that, so that you get that closer when you do start out. But anyway, that will pretty much do it for this installation. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them here on this video, or you can contact us at taboocustoms.com. That's where you'll also be able to purchase this kit, which we will leave a link in the description below. So thank you for watching. As always, a like or subscribe is greatly appreciated.